James Carnall, Managing Director and VP of Services at ZeroFox.
Olga Polishchuk, Senior Director of Analysis and Investigations with ZeroFox.
Let's talk a little bit about threat intelligence in regards to SolarWinds first. Let's start there and sort of talk a little bit about, now obviously most everybody I think at this conference would understand that that was a massive, I mean if we took the pandemic aside, that alone was a pretty significant incident for the cyber community. But that aside, let's talk about how information security and cyber intelligence can provide or did support companies that were interested in the footprint of their third parties or who might have been impacted. They obviously knew their own position in this, right? Whether they had them as a vendor or relied on them. But the questions I think we got a lot were, what does my network look like? What does my third party or fourth party network look like? And what is the risk to me there? Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the SolarWinds, it was an unprecedented attack. You know, as you pointed out, what we had seen is just sort of how supply chain vulnerabilities suddenly became very real. The sophistication of that attack alone was just you know, we saw months and months of articles still to this day coming out about the implications of SolarWinds, about new you know, tactics or techniques and procedures that were identified as part of that intrusion, how things were done. It's still a very much of it feels like it's still in a very evolving situation. But as you said, it yet again cemented the need to understand who are your suppliers, who are your third parties, what kind of hygiene do they have, what sort of emphasis do they place on cybersecurity, on education of their employees perhaps, or patching cadence, all those elements. And certainly those elements are not new in terms of the impact, but yet again we were reminded of how important cyber hygiene and knowing your public attack surface is.
So I think what you're saying is, again, the power of threat intelligence is for situational awareness, right? It's not going to tell you the whole story all the time, but it does give you an indication. So for instance, as an organization that relies on SolarWinds, I may have said, maybe we need to check out, go through our audit, or essentially have a third-party service in place to understand some of the vulnerabilities around that capability. And of course, when you hear it in the news, so again, when it breaks, right, when that story or when content is being sold in the dark web, right, that is an indication that something could be coming, right? And that you should be batting down hatches and potentially pinging that vendor to understand what their process is and whether they're hearing the same thing.
Absolutely, and I think the value of threat intelligence brings in this specific use case is understanding the context and understanding, actor's reputation. Who is this person that's been posting this information? Are they actually a reputable actor? Was it just banter? Can we reliably assess that this is a vector exploitation?
And I love that point, right? So essentially what you're saying is going beyond, right? Threat intelligence is not just simply an alert letting you know somebody talked about this vulnerability or threatened it in some way. But you're saying that essentially it can also provide a layer of, what do we know about this actor? What do we know? How long have they been in this environment? Have they been associated with any other attacks that have been successful? So essentially it gives some proof to the level of concern about that incident that's been delivered.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives that sort of evaluated aspect. It makes information more evaluated. It gives you sort of the so what.
A confidence level.
Absolutely.
Right? And we certainly do that in our reports in regards to Admiralty code and how it can be distributed and what our level of confidence is around these items, correct?
Yeah, I feel like this is just vital in the barrage of reports that come out from the threat intelligence vendors. It's sort of, how do you pick what is relevant? How do you pick what's reliable? What are the sources that your vendor is using to establish that reliability? So I feel like there's a lot of, there's a tradecraft that goes into this. So James, we've just a few days ago, you and I had a very interesting conversation about that sort of the working from home, the remote environment that caused individuals to become hyper-productive in some cases. You know, not so much complacent, but really trying to get the work done, and the security issues it's causing.
Yeah, I think again it's interesting, isn't it? Right, that as these teams are under a lot of pressure, right? The need for them to process large amounts of data, IP data, or essentially vulnerability data, they're relying in some cases with outside vendors or individuals that they trust online to process, to allow them to do that while they're working on other tasks. And what we're finding in some cases is these individuals are out there advertising that they may have done this work for an organization unsanctioned, or essentially on a system storing data where they have not gone through the proper third-party audit or things like that. So again, as we look at the immense amount of data that we're putting on these security experts or these individuals to process, and it's not just the security teams, it can be marketing, it could be any other data processing. We have this sort of, as we have evolved into relying on third parties to do just about anything for our business, these individuals are making these choices of like, I'm going to hand this over, or maybe I used it with a contractor at my last place and I'll just use them again, wink wink, right, and I'll give you the $100 to do that, right? There's so many sites out there that individuals can use, and that is another area of vulnerability. So we're getting the benefit from productivity, right, and getting these tasks done, but we've got the big risk as well.
Absolutely, and then the app security comes into place as well. Using apps that have not been sanctioned by your IT team, or perhaps that are leakier, or being so focused on delivering results of a specific task, or producing results that we might be operating in a publicly available Trello board, and all our patching cadence has been documented and made publicly available for everyone to see.
Well, and you've mentioned in the past about the openness of Venmo, right? I mean, some of the transactions of buying, now I know that you may have used this type of vendor just by looking at your Venmo account to pay them here or there, or to give them a bonus or some sort of other, and again, these things are being used, again, part of that productive culture, but they're also not always fully understood or audited. They're sort of in a shadow economy around these organizations, these individuals using them. So Olga, let's talk a little bit about ransomware and, again, deep dark web, essentially, and threat intelligence that can be derived. Nobody likes the panic that a security professional has when they receive a notification that essentially either there's an exploit out there that somebody wants to leverage and they're threatening them, or that they've essentially locked down a system and made some sort of ultimatum. Where does a company like ours, in regards to the deep dark web, sort of help in organizations like that?
Ransomware has been, since November last year, the double extortion and the new techniques and pressure techniques that a lot of these groups are leveraging have certainly evolved. You mentioned the dark web component and sort of threat intelligence surrounding collections in environments like dark web that can be very noisy. There are a lot of posts. 2020 was just a boom in amount of information that was posted to some of those dark web environments. It's really understanding who is behind these campaigns, what are they motivated by, which in this case it's financially motivated groups have been incredibly active, and it's also how are they evolving. Just a couple of weeks, a month ago, a prominent ransomware group had started recruiting people on looking for individuals to staff their call center, because now they have a call center that's going to put additional pressure on victims, or perhaps on partners or vendors of the victim. We had seen groups who have always operated within their own circle, reaching out and searching for additional members, which means they have so much work that they can't go through with who they have on staff. which is very concerning to see. So it's really being able to have a partner who's a threat intelligence vendor who's able to know what does your organization care about, what are the things that matter to you, and then provide you with that sort of high-touch context and correlation to all that noise that takes place in so many sources right now.
So, Olga, let's talk about some of the activism that takes place even with some of these organizations that participate in ransomware. Right at the beginning of the pandemic, we saw, oh, we're not going to attack hospitals or healthcare providers, but we're going to go out. I mean, again, so nice of them, isn't it?
Very honorable.
Help. Are we seeing more of that type of activity out there? Are they making choices in regards to their targets, not just simply the vulnerability, but politically what they can benefit from?
Well, we've just, yes, absolutely. It's there's no honor among thieves, and that hasn't been more true than what we've seen in 2020. Healthcare organizations who are already struggling with resources, with the situation that we're living in, and who have been, unfortunately, frequent victims of ransomware attacks, continue to be hit. We had seen some chatter among actors who now are targeting pharmaceutical companies and one of the comments that we saw was essentially saying, well, pharmaceutical companies are not hurting for money right now, so let's go after that. There is really no ethical concern. There were some actors that, did not target healthcare organizations, but that was just more of an exception to the rule. At least from looking at the statistics of organizations that have been hit by ransomware in 2020, healthcare is certainly in top 3, along with manufacturing and construction.
Yeah, no, threat intelligence, again, is one of the benefits of that is that we have the known knowns, right? We have the known unknowns, right? And then, of course, a lot of these organizations, the unknown unknowns. And so from a threat intelligence point of view, what we seek to do is, yes, we work with our clients to configure what it is that they know they own and what they know they need to protect. Then we work with I look at it as a sort of a layering, right? What do you need to be looking for that clients might be a ripple out there with your client base and your third party, fourth party. But quite often, one of the benefits of threat intelligence is we're just telling you about things as part of an audit that we do of like, did you know you had these assets? Did you know people were checking it at this location? Did you know that people were posting photos of their computer or their badge or things like that are out there that are in all these different apps, right? I mean, even a simple cute TikTok video that somebody does in their office to lift morale, there may be a board in the background that is in the picture that has some sort of projects on it.
And we've seen that happen.
Right. And we're so used to having that relaxed culture, and even now because we're working from home, and heaven forbid, there was a big story about the BBC individual who had the child come in and then the mum ran in, and now we're seeing our dogs and our family walk apart in front of us every single day. So our threshold for that sort of thing has come down, and we have to balance that with the need for security. And again, threat intelligence is a way to find these sort of areas and inform you that you have a problem or a concern or something you have to lock down.
And really reduce that uncertainty around.
And that's a fantastic point, Olga, right, is the uncertainty part, right? I mean, I think that's the confidence comes from we're looking, right? I know I've got a partner out there, a vendor, ZeroFox is out there looking every day for the things I don't have time or I'm not thinking of looking at. And we as a business have a benefit because we're doing it for so many organizations and so many sectors that we very rapidly can pivot and adapt and say, hey, this is where we're seeing it. Let's implement it for all our customers. We don't have to sit there and go, I didn't think of this, right? It's coming in constantly. So again, teams like yourself in the investigation realm, when you find something, you trickle that down to essentially the collectors and the sensors that we have, and then our managed threat intelligence benefits from that, and then essentially it goes into our dedicated analysts as an understanding education of the clients and what have you, and then goes up into our research arm and our investigation arm. So that's that ecosystem, that continual self-licking lollipop, if you will.
And that's what I love about ZeroFox is that sort of that team environment and how analysts strive to inform each other. So we're not working in silos. We're all working for the common goal to protect our customers. So we are constantly sharing information. We're making sure we provide additional level of investigation or deep dive or correlate information, debunk information as well, working very closely with the Alpha team and the GSI team and geopolitical teams. It's been a wonderful experience. So James, we've talked about a whole series of events that took place in 2020, a very, very dynamic year. Despite all the challenges that that organizations had to go through, despite those challenges, why, in your opinion, have we seen this sort of increased shift to threat intelligence across organizations?
Yeah, it's a great question, Olga, because these teams are small and they're a cost center and they're often got a lot of financial pressure on them to perform. And I think that, again, certainly with the pandemic that we've seen, situational awareness is a must-have, right? Because essentially that sensor net that you need in regards to what's going on. And we're seeing it, right? The core is you used to focus on your systems that you had control of. And now you start to have some responsibility for, as you market to your customers, that next ring of influence that you have. And now we've seen that sort of branch out into third party and now fourth party, right? Because there is so much that an organization now, because of the dynamic nature of how business works, we have to push out these key, accounting and sales support to other systems and other environments. And with that, we don't have the control we once had. And now we're a global economy, right? We saw this through the Suez Canal, right? I mean, a ship runs aground and what the impact of our business has. So threat intelligence informs the organization, not just simply the boogeyman, right? So the person that we can't see that we're looking at in the deep corners, but just the things that are in front of us that we're not watching right now. So threat intelligence and our analysts allow organizations to focus on what's on the horizon, what's happening in the global ecosystem. What does that press release mean? What does that article mean? What does that bit of intelligence mean? What does that CEO being ill or that corruption case? What does that mean for me as a business? And what is the financial business impact? And we're seeing that expectation on these organizations, these security teams, to go beyond just simply what it is that the business is trying to lock down and secure, but what the ecosystem is what's happening within an ecosystem and what the impact is on the business. And that's why we're seeing the growth in this, because they see that they need to have eyes everywhere, right?
Absolutely, and you brought up a good point about sort of overtask and small teams that a lot of our clients have that rely on us as sort of as an extension of their own team to perform investigations or to provide a travel risk assessment or a geopolitical assessment. And you brought up a good point about sort of it's beyond just the dark corners. In your opinion, that global intelligence aspect, how does it help customers sort of stay on top, especially with smaller budgets?
Yeah, so we've seen, essentially we have a sort of something we distribute that sort of educates about the top physical security and information security, cyber law, regulation changes, things like that. And what we're seeing is that the organizations that are being efficient are bundling up that, sometimes white labeling it, right, to distribute out to influence the organization, to educate their business leaders on what they need to be thinking about, not just simply in their own business, but what's happening in the industry, what's happening globally, right? What's happening in an industry that has parallel supply chain type impact that we need to think about, because it's not happening directly to us, but how do we red team that? How do we get ahead of that in regards to how we think about protecting our organization? And that's the real power of it, right? The people that are the best at this are the ones that see the potential in every morsel that they receive and not simply put the blinders on and say, hey, this is about protecting that system or protecting essentially the perimeter of the business. It's much more than that.
And I think there's also an important aspect of information sharing. What healthcare ISAC has done in 2020 was immense. They've educated they pushed that awareness forward about schemes and fraud, and FTC has created portals for consumers to check the latest scam or latest fraud, which tax season is coming up now, so that's obviously going to continue to propagate. So that's sort of how organizations can come together and unite and share that information about threat actor tactics, information about the new and upcoming threat, or perhaps even debunk some of the threats that that might have been hyperinflated or overhyped.
Well, and that's true. These items, these nuggets are not proprietary, right? They can be shared with the community, because you're not talking about your system, you're not talking about your infrastructure. You're sharing a concept or an idea that you're seeing emerge in front of you. And I think that's the power of it.